Okay, so I welcome all participants to this webinar organized by Bangalore chapter of IAA. And today we have with us our speaker is Sudeep Das and Leena Madhav. So basically today we have selected a very important topic because this new labor code. You know that there are a lot of changes happening in our country, and then we are all geared up for Atma Nirbhar Bharat. So a lot of thrust on manufacturing, and manufacturing always backed by that labor reforms. And there are many very old 200 years, 100 years old labor laws, etc. that has been changed. Now there are many codes, labor laws that becoming merged into only 4 codes. So today we have two great, very well-known speaker with us. One is Sudeep and another is Leena. Sudeep is an independent expert having more than 25 years of experience in this field, and he's a speaker on various topics on compliance, tax, and he's associated with Walker Chandrok, and he's a regular speaker, and he's served various clientele, including your real estate, infotech, manufacturing, pharma. He's huge experience in this field. And we have also Leena. Leena, previously, like me, I worked in a manufacturing company, Tata Motors, like she also worked in auto ancillaries companies called basically Motherson Sugi. And she is also a company secretary having extensive exposures in the field of due diligence, labor law, in these fields. So I don't want to waste any more time because the time is too short. I was talking to Shudi, we are telling that this matter can be dealt only in more than 1.5 hours to 2 hours, but still we have to cut short within 50 minutes. So I'm just requesting Sudeep to speak. Before, just one thing, once Sudeep is finishing, once this session will be over, there will be one poll that will be conducted by our IIA coordinator, Mehnaz. After that, the vote of thanks will be there. Okay, and lot of thanks to Sudeep and Leena for accepting our request in a very short notice. And thank you very much. So right now, this next 1 hour is yours. Thank you, Sudeep. Please.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Amal, and thank you everybody for taking time out today evening and presenting us with an opportunity to share our thoughts on this very key mandate that the government is trying to implement, the labor code framework. So as we all know that the Ministry of Labor and Employment over the last 1.5 years has put in a lot of efforts to rationalize the labor laws which are prevalent in India from the pre-independence era. So they have effectively notified 4 labor codes. So these codes are the Code on Wages, the Code on Social Security, the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, and the Industrial Relations Code. So these codes effectively subsumes 29 of the labor laws pertaining to the specific topics. While Code on Wages has received the presidential assent during August 2019, the other 3 codes have received the presidential assent on 28th of September 2020. So effectively, if we have to look at that how these codes have shaped up over a period of time, you would find that there has been a much needed stress from the government to make and operationalize these codes over a period of time, and there has been a lot of stakeholders involved to ensure that the laws which has been there in existence that effectively gets operationalized and over a period of time with an intent to amalgamate, simplify, and rationalize these relevant provisions of the subsumed laws. So what I can also put across is after the key mandate of getting the goods and services tax implemented in July of 2017, we can safely say that this new labor law or new labor code framework, which is currently notified already by the central government, and this is already a law. What we are currently anticipating is the rules and the schemes and other guidance from the state authorities to present to us and ensure that these laws are being implemented in a more streamlined and planned way. These are the four codes. Effectively, what we see over the slide is effectively tries to consolidate various laws relating to the topics. So these are the four codes that we have discussed, and let's look at how these codes and what are the key impact analysis around these codes to understand it better. Next slide, please. So having heard that what we have known about this code is the code is effectively 1.5 year old. Effectively, they're September of 2020 when all these four codes have become a law. Let's look at it and take a step back to understand that how the applicability of these laws currently would pan out under the new codes vis-a-vis the existing laws. So under the Code on Wages of 2019, under the existing law, what we have seen is the Payment of Wages Act is applicable to employees who are earning wages up to 24,000 rupees per month, to only to certain employees who are not into managerial roles or scheduled employments. But if you look at the comparative under the new code, this is applicable to all employees and employers, irrespective of any kind of exception carved out or wages threshold being prescribed. So absolutely no exception has been mentioned under the new code on wages. Similarly, for Social Security Code, we would also see that the base threshold of 20 or more employees for the coverage has been kept intact. There is a big stress by the government to bring in unorganized sector workers in its ambit, along with the organized sector, which is already covered. So what we know is it's barely 10% of the unorganized sector currently under coverage. So there is a big stress to bring them on board. Along with, there are new concepts of how the gig workers and the platform workers have been introduced under the Social Security Code, which we will discuss in the coming slides. Going to Industrial Relations Code, we have been knowing that the existing laws, it's effectively the Industrial Disputes Act 1947 and the other relative laws which are applicable to the industrial establishments across. But if you look at the Industrial Relations Code 2020, there is a systemic ambit improvement to look at how the applicability can be further extended, and it covers the trade unions also. Along with it, it also covers the contractors and the legal representatives of the deceased employer. So that is something which makes the coverage much wider and intends to try and get more coverage for all these establishments and employees as a whole. Moving ahead to Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, as we know currently, these are the existing laws which are applicable to all workers who are not in the supervisory or the managerial role of the industrial establishments. But under the new code, again, there is absolutely no exception has been carved out when we are looking at applicability under the new Occupational Safety and Working Conditions Code. It is completely applicable to all the establishments across. Next slide, please. So having seen that, where do we currently stand on the labor codes? The four codes have been notified. The state rules and the schemes are under works. The center and various state governments are currently working together, putting their thoughts and taking the public representation. Various industry bodies have represented on various forums to bring in their thoughts and inputs around the definitions and the coverage and various other aspects. So let's look at that after the applicability provisions. What are the common aspects across all these four codes? These are extremely critical to understand because there is a huge emphasis on the definition of wages. So unlike the existing laws where you would find the wages has been defined under various statutes in a very different way, whether it's gratuity, whether it's PF or ESI. Here, the government has taken a consistent step forward to keep the definition of wages uniform across all the four codes. However, they have also given a way out to outline to certain exclusions, which effectively has been specified under the definition of wages. Along with it, there are certain principles underlying to that concept, which we will discuss in the coming slides. The second key uniform point that we have seen when evaluating these four codes is the big emphasis from the government side to move every critical aspect of whether it's a registration, filing, periodic compliance requirements, inspection, calling for information from the authorities to be moving completely online, and it's completely web-based platform wherein the physical interface between the industry players and the labor authorities would significantly reduce, and that certainly is a welcome step. Third, and not the least, is decriminalizing the offenses wherein the government is trying to do away with the provisions of imprisonment under various labor laws to give an industry the effective way forward, to give them all the opportunities which are possible to focus on business and not to fear away from the provisions of imprisonment, to and also give an opportunity to make good the offenses which have been committed under these codes. So these are a few points which will make it a very pro-industry step and would definitely pave a way to a more streamlined approach as to how the industry are currently looking at the codes. Next slide, please. Now let's, having looked at how the applicability works, where do we stand on the labor codes, and also looking at how the key impact areas, it's critical that to understand what are the key impact areas from all these four codes to understand and take a deep dive on these codes. For this, I would request my colleague Lena to share her thoughts and walk us through on this. Lena, over to you.
Sure, Sudeep, thanks. So the first code which we are going to discuss is the code on wages, and this code is an amalgamation of four current laws. First is the Payment of Wages Act, second is Payment of Bonus Act, then the Minimum Wages Act, and then we have the Equal Remuneration Act. So this code has provisions related to all these four laws. First thing is the coverage. What kind of coverage does this code on wages has? So about the coverage, Sudeep has already informed you that this code does not have any threshold level which were provided in, say, either the Payment of Wages Act, which is like 24,000, or the Minimum Wages Act, which is applicable on scheduled employment. So we can say this code covers all kind of employees. One more point to be noted over here is that the code on wages and the social security code is applicable on employees, whereas the next two codes, which is the occupational safety, health and working condition code and the IR code, they are applicable on workers. So the code on wages has a much wider impact. It covers all kind of employees, whether they are any skilled, unskilled, managerial, administrative, or any supervisory category. So that is the first thing. Second is it is bringing a new definition of wages, which says that your base salary or base wage cannot be less than 50% of your total wages. So due to that, what is happening is it is affecting the calculation of all the retirement benefits, whether it be the PF, gratuity, bonus, or maybe the leave encashment. So that is why this is having a much wider impact and is affecting all kind of organizations, as it is a very important definition. We'll take it in coming slides in detail. And next new thing which this code is doing is they are going to fix a floor wage. The national government is going to come out with a national floor wage, Now, while fixing the national floor wage, the government is going to take into consideration like minimum living standard, your skill set, whether you're skilled or unskilled, geographical area, what kind of industry you're working in. So all these considerations the government is going to take into account. And for this, the for setting up of authority to decide the national floor wage, government has already notified the rules. So the rules are in place as on date. So once the national floor wage has been defined by the central government, the state government is going to come out with their minimum rate of wages. So these minimum rate of wages cannot go below the national floor wage. So that is one new thing, that once you have the national floor wage, the minimum wages cannot go below that. It can go above that, but it cannot go below that. Next thing is the government has fixed the wage cycle. So it has to be either daily or fortnightly or monthly or weekly. But the cycle has been fixed. And accordingly, the time period for making the payment has also been fixed. For example, in case of monthly, you have to make the payment by 7th of the month. Now, the next new thing is the full and final settlement. So you have to make the full and final settlement within 2 days of the removal, resignation, retrenchment, or dismissal. So that is one new thing. And that next thing is the deductions from the wages. I've already told you that there has been a capping of exclusions at 50% with the new definition of wages. And in terms of deductions again, whether the deductions are in nature of fine or some loan advance or whatever deductions are going to be made. First of all, the deductions cannot be made on a voluntarily basis by the organization. You can make only the deductions which have been provided under the code. And then again, the deductions cannot be more than 50%. So that is one more capping you have. Also, the new methods of payment have been recognized, which is like either by check or the online mode. And the next thing is in terms of equal remuneration, the provisions of Equal Remuneration Act, which are getting merged over here. You cannot discriminate on the basis of sexes, your employment or rules related to that, or the facilities or other advantages you are providing as part of your employment. So the government has also given a recognition to the third gender over here. In terms of payment of bonus act, the government has said that the appropriate government will come out with the new threshold levels. So the current threshold level continue unless and until the state government come out with the new threshold level. Also, the other terms and condition and the way of calculation remain the same in the new code also. Over to you, Sudeep, for taking the Social Security Code.
Right. So the Social Security Code 2020, effectively, if you look at the key impact areas, you would see that there is a voluntary coverage of an introduction of the concepts of opt-in and opt-out of the social security schemes. This concept is particularly giving an opportunity to a small setup wherein the number of employees may not have reached 20, but there is a voluntary coverage that the employer is planning to take. And over a period of time, if the base threshold of 20 is not breached, there is also a provision to allow that employer to come out of the voluntary coverage scheme. So they can plan to even come out of it over a period of time. Second, there are introduction of new category of employees like platform workers, gig workers, fixed term employees. If I can place a simple usage of words for the platform workers, these would be certain workers who will be enrolled over a platform, maybe a similar setup to a Zomato, Swiggy, Uber, or Ola, who effectively get their drivers enrolled over a particular platform. Gig workers effectively, and the fixed term employees also. Gig workers are those workers who are or not covered under the traditional relationships of a master or servant or an employer of employee. They rather work on a principal to principal basis. Even the fixed term employees, just to put it simply, that currently we have permanent employees where the contractual terms or the employment contract just speak about the start day of employment, but there is no end date to it. Vis-a-vis, where in case of fixed term employees, not only there will be a start date, there will also be an end date to that contract. So that is how the distinction could be made. In terms of quantum of gratuity payment, there would be fixed term workers who are rendering services for less than 5 years. There are provisions under the Social Security Code to include them also for the purposes of providing the benefits under the gratuity. The working period for journalists has been reduced to 3 years. That has been introduced rather. The gratuity payable to the contract laborers as well has been put in line with the eligibility criteria as has been set out on the code. So effectively, as we have discussed earlier, there is a wide coverage that the Social Security Code tries to bring in, not only somebody who has been under the permanent payroll or more organized, that they were already covered. This is something where an extensive coverage has been planned to the fixed term employers or freelancers who effectively hop on from jobs to jobs, maybe rendering less than 5 years period, but the coverage still talks about it. One key point to note here is there is no change absolutely for permanent employees for the purposes of gratuity benefits. That remains at a period of 5 years and above. Next slide, please. Very key slide here. So Lena has already mentioned that we will discuss about the definition of wages, and it's a critical slide. Let's understand what the definition of wages unfolds for us. So if you look at the meaning and inclusion, what the definition of wages talk on the left side of the slide, it covers all remuneration payable by way of salaries, allowances, or otherwise, which is expressed or capable of being so expressed in terms of money, and includes basic pay, dearness allowance, and retaining allowance. So two key, I would invite everybody's attention here to see that there are two key points here to note. One, it covers all remuneration. It absolutely does not carve out any kind of exception. Anything that is payable to an employee would be covered as a remuneration. And it also is an inclusive definition. There is absolutely no exhaustiveness to this definition, but it only brings out the three key terms. What the definition also bring forth is provide an outline, a specified list or specified exclusions list, which effectively is only if the payment nature of payment can be nomenclatured under all these 11 heads would be classified as an exclusion and none other. Let's look at all this exclusion list. So if you look at here with point 1, statutory bonus payable but not forming part of remuneration. So only the statutory bonus which is not forming part of remuneration has been excluded. There is absolutely no exclusion mentioned for a variable pay or a special allowance or a performance bonus. So only exclusion here is a statutory bonus. Similarly, value of house accommodation and utilities, employer contribution to provident fund pension together with its accretion, conveyance allowance or value of traveling concession, sum paid to defrayment of special expenses due to the nature of work, HRA, remuneration payable under any award or settlement between the parties or under a court or tribunal order, any overtime allowance, any commission, any gratuity payable on termination, or any retrenchment compensation or benefit. So these are the specified exclusion list. Only if the nature of payments are falling within this list would be covered as a part of exclusion. Otherwise, it would all be covered within the four corners or four boundaries of the definition of wages. Two key principles to look at here is the specified exclusions, which should be capped at 50% of the total remuneration, excluding the gratuity and retrenchment compensation, which is payable upon termination. So we will look at a couple of illustrations in the coming slide to understand this better. This is one key principle. Next key principle here is the definition of wages also talks about remuneration in kind. So there is a concept which has been brought in to the extent that if the remuneration in kind, it may be stock awards, it could be ESOPs, RSUs, or other shares, or maybe a car perquisite, which which does not get paid as a part of the monetary consideration, but it's effectively non-monetary, and remuneration in kind may get included as part of it. But however, as an underlying principle, if the remuneration in kind does not exceed 15% of the total wages, it would be included as a part of the definition of wages. As soon as it gets exceeds 15%, it would fall in the definition of exclusions. So these are the key principles if we look at how the definition of wages currently has been mentioned or defined under the Central Labor Code framework. I will just take 10-15 seconds of pause and let the audience just digest this slide. Next slide, please. Again, a very key slide here. It will help us to clarify certain concepts as to what the definition of wages tries to unfold for us. Let's look at a couple of illustrations here. Scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario 1, we have taken a total remuneration at 25,000 rupees, wherein we have divided that remuneration into various components of basic, HRA, special allowance, conveyance, overtime, and commission. So if you look at the right side of scenario 1, the table, we will see the specified exclusions would be HRA, conveyance, overtime, and commission, totaling up to 11,000 rupees. So if you reduce 11,000 out of 25,000, we get a sum of 14,000, which is more than 50%. So which effectively is less than 50% of the total remuneration as exclusions. So wages would be considered as 25,000 minus 11,000 here. While let's look at scenario 2. Let's flip that structure or flip some amounts of it. So what we have done is we have increased the specified exclusions to 13,000 rupees. Here now 13,000 is more than 50%. 13,000 is the total exclusions under the scenario 2. Now which is more than 50% of the total remuneration under scenario 2. Here we have to cap the exclusions to 12,500. We cannot exceed 50% of the total remuneration. I'll take a quick pause for 10 seconds to allow the audience to look at. Next slide, please. Let's look at another illustration, particularly from the aspect of gratuity, because we have been receiving a lot of inquiries and a lot of discussions around this topic as to how the gratuity will effectively make an impact. So under the existing law, if you see the table on the right side after the CTC structure, we have divided the entire CTC structure as 2 million rupees into various components. On the right side, how do we look at the existing law as the definition of salary for gratuity purposes vis-a-vis the new Social Security Code? So under the existing law, we take only the basic salary into consideration for the purposes of contributing to gratuity and the benefits under that law, which effectively paves the way for the monthly wages of 41,667. Vis-a-vis under the new Social Security Code, it's not only the basic that would be covered, because the exclusions does not cover the variable pay or bonus and the special allowance. This would also get included, and effectively if you see the annual wages number, it would significantly arise to a particular number. Here in this case is around 1.2 million, so which takes the monthly wages to a very high number. Please note, this being one example, it depends how the structure is there in the company, how the corporates are dividing a particular CTC structure into various components. So these number will definitely change as to how the numbers would effectively look at. So if I take the right side of the table of this slide, you would see under the existing law, under the definition of for the payment of gratuity, you will see 15/26 of the monthly wage into number of years of service of 7, where we have assumed the service period to be as 7 years. So here the value would be around 1,60,000 rupees. Vis-a-vis, under the Code on Social Security, you would see the number going significantly higher. I will repeat, it all depends how the components have been redesigned and how the allocation has been made. This is how the impact of gratuity can bring in on a particular time in frame. Next slide, please. I would hand over to my colleague Lena to share our thoughts on the balance to codes.
Yeah, we'll come to the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Condition Code now. So in this code, we have 13 acts which are getting merged. Most of them are sector specific, like the cine worker, journalist, or you say plantation worker, or sales employee. So all such kind of acts which are sector specific are getting merged over here. But the main acts which are getting merged and on which we will focus are the Factories Act, the Contract Labor Regulation Act, and the Interstate Migrant Worker Act. So these are the 3 acts which are main and which are getting merged over here. Though I said like the main act which is getting merged is the Factories Act, but this code is applicable on establishments also. So if an establishment or a factory has more than 10 workers, then it is required to get itself registered under this code. The registration needs to be done within a period of 60 days from the date of applicability. Now, in case you have any central registration, which the government will come out with a list and specify which all registrations, then this registration will not be required. So in case the registration is not granted within a period of 60 days, it is deemed to be registered. The organization is deemed to be registered. I've already said that, this code and the next code, which is the IR code, are applicable on worker. Now the definition of worker remains the same, which is there under the Industrial Dispute Acts right now, which says that, worker excludes from its ambit a managerial person, an administrative person, and also a supervisory person who has a wage of more than 18,000 per month. So in case you fall under those 3 categories, then you are excluded, otherwise you are a worker. So now you may have a condition where you have a very highly technically qualified person, a PhD person, but he is holding a technical post. In that scenario, he can be held as a worker. And this dispute is currently existing under the Industrial Dispute Act, under the workman definition. And we have certain Supreme Court rulings also on the matter, where say pilots have been held as a worker. So that dispute continues to be there under this code again. So now the applicability is on workers. The concept of core activity and non-core activity, which has been provided under the different codes, have been carried forward to the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Condition Code. Core activity is something in which is your main object, in which the company is engaged. And now in the core activity, you cannot have contract workers. So there is this prohibition of employing contract worker in your core activity. However, in your non-core activities, say your packing, unpacking, loading, your security, your housekeeping, your gardening, all such kind of activities, you can have the contract labor. As the provisions of Factories Act are getting merged over here, we have the whole lot of employers' duties and employees' duties which have been provided under this code. Employers' duty include, providing appointment letter, making provision for an annual health checkup, or in case of more than 100 workers, providing for canteen facility, or in case of more than 50 worker, providing for crèche facility. Also, we have the provisions with respect to the leave rules, which is like 1 day for every 20 days. And also the new provision, which says that, at the end of the year, worker has a right to ask for encashment of the leave. So this is something which will affect the P&L of the organization, because worker at the end of the year may go ahead and ask for encashment of his leave. We have the new provisions with respect to women employees. So if you want them to work after 7 p.m. or before 6 a.m., then you need to have a pre-consent from them. So all these things are going to affect the HR policies of the organizations and also the P&L account, because workers may ask for encashment of the leave at the end of the year. So apart from the provisions of the Factories Act, which are getting merged over here, the provisions of Contract Labor Regulation Act are also getting merged over here. So in case you are an organization which has more than 50 workers, or you are a manpower supplier who is supplying more than 50 people or resources on a contractual basis, then the provisions of the Act become applicable on you. Once the provisions are applicable, you need to mandatorily go for a registration. It is an online registration, and you can also have a all India license, unlike the current situation. So this is the benefit which the government is providing. As a principal employer, however, now you have to take care of few things, like you'll have to make payment to the contractor by 7th of the month, because he in turn has to make payment to his workers. And also you are responsible as a principal employer for the gratuity and bonus in case your contractor fails to pay the same. Also, as the provision of Factories Act is coming over here and the provision of CLRA is also coming here, as a principal employer, you are responsible to provide for certain welfare activities to the contractual worker under this code. And next is the Interstate Migrant Worker Act. So in terms of interstate migrant worker, if you are an establishment who's employing them directly, or in case you are a contractor, then you have to provide for their PF, ESI, and in case of death, you need to inform their relatives in the home state. And then there is a provision which is going to put an extra burden on the organization, which is that in case you have interstate migrant worker, you need to pay them once a year for the travel to their home state. So this is something which will affect the P&L of the organizations again. So the next code we are going to talk about is the Industrial Relation Code. And under this code, we have 3 acts which are getting merged. First is the Trade Union Act, Industrial Disputes Act, and then is the Standing Order Act. So in terms of the standing order, the applicability threshold is 300 workers now, and the central government has already issued the model standing order for manufacturing and service industry, which is out in the public domain for public comments. So very soon we are going to have the final model standing orders. And in case the organization is going to adopt the same, then it just needs to provide an intimation to the government. It's going to be an online intimation. In case you wish to go for changes, then you may come out with your changes, and for that there is whole lot of approval which is required and the whole lot of process which is given. So these are the central standing order which are out in public domain. but the government has also given authority to the state government to come out with their own model standing order, and also they have authorized the state government that they can increase the threshold level, or they can just exempt certain industries from this requirement. The way we have currently, say most of the state governments have excluded the IT kind of industry, ITS industries, from the requirement of getting a standing order registered. So the same way they can continue to do under this code also. So there is this new concept which the government has introduced under the IR code, which is the concept of fixed term employment. Now, fixed term employment is something which a company can take benefit of. They can employ people on fixed term basis. It could be any time period, like it could be 1 year or 10 years. But the only requirement is, in case the fixed term employee finishes a period of 1 year, you need to provide for his gratuity. Otherwise, you need to provide for his retirement benefits, the PF, PSI, everything. Also, his terms of employment in terms of like number of hours or the leave entitlement cannot be any different from a permanent worker. So the only benefit you are getting over here is, in case the person is leaving the employment due to his contract coming to an end, then you need not go for the retrenchment procedure over here. Now we'll come to the provisions of grievance redressal mechanism, which is provided under this code. And this is very important because each and every organization needs to follow the same. So in terms of grievance redressal mechanism, we have the five levels across which it works. First level is, if you have 20 or more workers, you need to form a grievance redressal committee. So grievance redressal committee, it will have the representation both from the employer and employees side. Next level is the works committee. If you have 100 or more workers, you need to go for works committee also. So these are the two levels which are within the organization. So the next level is the conciliation officer, and this is the third party, and it comes from the government side. And after the conciliation officer, we have the two tribunals, the industrial tribunal and the national tribunal. So that is the grievance redressal mechanism which is provided under the IR code. In terms of strikes and lockout, it says that you need to give at least minimum 14 days notice, which is valid for a period of 60 days. And in case the matter is pending before any conciliation officer or any, the tribunals, then you cannot go for strike or lockout. So this is new provision, and you cannot have any flash strikes the way we have right now. Next is the provisions with respect to retrenchment, layoff, and closure. So in case you have more than 300 workers who are being laid off in a factory, then you need to take approvals. Otherwise, in between 50 and 300, you have to follow the provisions of the code. And if it is below 50, then you can do it on your own. So these are some of the benefits which have been provided under the IR code. As you can see, for the applicability of the most of the things, the threshold level has been increased. So this will give some kind of, a flexibility to MSME kind of industry to operate on its own. So over to you, Sudeep.
Yeah, next slide, please. Right. So having seen and gone through how the four codes and what are the key impact areas, applicability, and various aspects around it, let's look at what are the key areas for consideration for employers and employees alike. So while we have seen that how the codes are likely to impact employers and employees, it would also be critical that how the internal policies or organizational policies of an of an organization would be impacted, whether it's from the payroll function or HR or its legal finance, because these will definitely have to revisit the existing laws. What are the policies really speak out, whether they are aligned, and how to align it with the new labor code framework. That would remain critical. Second point that will also come out is not only that these policies, there would also be discussions around how the fixed term employment contracts, how other vendor contractual agreements have to be revisited. Are there any agreements which has to fall apart from the permanent employees? There are also should be agreements around the fixed term employment. Effectively, will that need a revisit? Also has to be seen. How the provisions under gratuity or leave encashment would be impacted, because everything will needs to be revisited along with it. Not only that the legal team and other aspects of the comp ben or other structures have to be revisited. What also has to be seen at the end of the day, is there an additional financial burden on the corporates? Is there an impact on the profit and loss account of the financial entity, where effectively it will bring in certain aspects like for gratuity, as we have seen that there are changes going that would be impacting the employer and employee on the payout side. Will that happen effectively if the implementation of codes happen, let's say for example from 1st of April as example? So should it be taken effective 1st of April, or should it also go sometime back? Should it be retrospectively applicable, or only should be prospective? That remains to be seen. These are certain guidance or certain aspects that the states have to come out, provide us guidance. Otherwise there will remain a vacuum that will remain open for interpretational issues. So there are a lot of other factors that will go into how the operational aspects of these categories or these payroll policies or any other policy that has to be revisited. Next slide. Perfect. That's it from our side. We are happy to take any questions. Back to the organizers, please.
Yeah, so hello, Mehnaz, have you received any question from the chat box?
Yes, I'm just checking on it.
Okay. And if you get, then just to
Yes, sir. We have a question which says, is statutory bonus quantified?
Lina, would you take that?
Yeah, so as I shared that, in the code, it is said that the appropriate government will come out with the new limits. So at present, we don't have it. So the state governments are going to come out with their own limits and provide like the upper limit on which what would be the capping also and the applicability also. So we still wait for that. Otherwise, percentage calculation is same.
Right. So the next question is, what are the standing orders?
So the standing orders are the manual or the HR rules of the company. And currently also we have the Standing Order Act, and it is a mandatory act applicable to all kind of organizations. But some of the state governments have excluded certain industry. Say in Karnataka, I believe the ITS industry is excluded from the applicability of Standing Order Act. So they are basically the rules and regulations of a company, HR manual, you can say.
Okay. Is there a cap on leave encashment?
So in terms of leave encashment, what is allowed is the carry forward of 30 leaves. And otherwise, in terms of encashment, they haven't specified how much would be the capping. So maybe the rules which will come out will have more clarity, the appropriate state government rules or the central rules.
Just to add to that, what Lena mentioned, so each of the state is seen as a jurisdiction, and each of the state would come out with various rules and schemes pertaining to all these operational aspects. So we have to wait out for that.
Okay, by any chance, do we know the date of like from which this rule is going to be effective?
So as of now,
yeah,
I'm taking. So as of now, what we understand is the center and the various states are actually putting their thoughts together. There are rules and various schemes and operational aspects of these 4 labor codes are in the works. And also once that is rules are finalized internally by the state governments in consultation with center, that will be placed for public deliberation and comments for a period of at least 30 to 45 days. After that, it will only get finalized. So we are effectively anticipating that as we get to hear the union labor secretary over the press that he has been talking about getting the labor codes implemented very quickly. But as there are press reports in last 2-3 days where we have also read that it's taking time between the states and they are going little slow on the implementation piece of it. But what is critical is we do anticipate these rules to be coming out in the public domain pretty quickly, and then effectively once the deliberation period is over, there would be implementation date also notified post then.
Right, so is an NGO considered an industry for the purpose of industrial relations?
no, NGO is exempted from IR code.
Right. So are these codes applicable for the technology industry which does not have manufacturing setup and is completely outsourced?
Yes, the applicability is there on establishments also.
Okay. So the contractual labor, what do we mean by the core activity?
So the core activity concept is existing concept and it is there under the current law also. And core activity is your main object, the main object which you are pursuing, the main activity which you are carrying out.
Okay. Should we be making any provision for March 21 audit?
So Lena, are you taking it?
You can take it. I wasn't able to hear the question actually.
So would you repeat it, Manas? Sorry.
Surely. Whether to make any provision for March 2021 audit?
So as of now, what we understand is because the codes are still not has been implemented, we would rather waiting for the state guidelines as to how the things will shape up. I think as of now, the existing laws are only in vogue. So we have to wait out for the state and the central framework to effectively come out with certain guidance around it. That's what we can say as of now.
Okay, so currently a person, if he has a limit of 15,000 and contribution can be limited to 1,800 for the PF, will he be similar wage for the new code?
So as we hear and as we read the regulation from the SSCO's perspective, what we have seen is the base threshold of 15,000 rupees per month as basic has not been tweaked. It has been kept intact. So if any employee who is contributing or employer is contributing to the extent of 1,800 rupees a month or the basic or beyond on the basic salary, is likely not to be impacted from the provisions of the Social Security Code.
Right, so for gratuity payouts, will the computation be done from the date of joining or from 1st April 2021?
It remains to be seen. As I highlighted earlier, we still have got to wait out for the state regulations and schemes that will effectively pave the way forward and provide us further guidance.
Right, sir. So as per the new code, is ESI eligibility calculated on gross or on wages?
So ESI currently talks about gross salary. There is a concept of gross salary on ESI which talks about 21,000 rupees a month. So that effectively remains same. There is no change in that concept. The only thing is the states will come out with further guidance if there are any further or additional exceptions carved out to the definition.
Right, sir. So, for the regular employees, do they still need to fulfill 5 years criteria for becoming eligible for the gratuity?
Absolutely, there is no change to that base regulation. For the permanent employee to be eligible for the gratuity benefit, the 5-year time frame of rendering of services remains intact.
Okay, in the wage definition, the exclusion is provided in point A2, but we saw in your table that the telephone reimbursement is not considered under which the point A2 it comes. So I don't know if this question is understood or no, but it is typed this way.
Okay, we got to look at it. If you can just take that question and send it to or email to us, Manas, probably we can respond.
I'll do that, sir. So
Okay.
are you there to take more questions, or should we end it here?
I think we have to close at 6. So that is the thing. So I have only one question. That suppose the unit is located in many states. So every states, if there's a different sets of their regulations, will it be very much complicated? Your salary calculation, everything will be different. No? So every state, especially in manufacturing industries, there are in many states, like in, see, West Bengal will tell something, Karnataka will tell something, your UP will tell something. So how things will be managed if
So-
a unit is located in many locations? Sorry, many states.
All right. So what we can place our submission here is the central framework. What we discussed today is the Central Labor Code framework. This is the underlying principle. States cannot make it harsher than this. They have to only make it better. So let's say, for example, in the center, Lena also highlighted that the maximum of 30 days as leave encashment can be accrued and taken forward or carried forward, right? Now, other states can make it better. They can go beyond. They cannot make it lesser than that. So effectively, like for the state of Karnataka, what we understand currently is around 45 days of maximum leave that can be accrued. So this is something which is a base law. States have to only make better than it. But yes, I do agree with you that different states can have different limitations or different exceptions carved out to the main definition. And there are likely to be certain changes like that, what we currently have under the existing laws also. Let's say for shops and establishment regulations for various states, there would be different operational aspects to it. Similarly, if you look at other state laws where the state have a say, they will definitely have different states would have different regulations altogether currently. Lena, any thoughts that you want to add?
Yeah, so I'd like to just add over here that currently also most of these things are actually the labor laws are under the concurrent list. So we have currently also the central laws about them and the state laws. And it is going to continue in a similar manner going forward also. So the way organizations are handling it right now, it will continue to be handled in a similar fashion.
Okay. So, Mehnaz, a lot of thanks to you. Mehnaz, please, you can carry on this
Sure, sir.
poll that I'll propose the vote of things.
Yeah. So we have some pending questions which I'll send you offline so that we can reply to them over email.
Yes, sir. Yes. You also send it to me. I'll also
Sure.
talk to them, and then once I get the answer, I'll share it.
Sure, sir.
And this presentation, there are a lot of requests came to me to get the presentation. So
Okay.
Sudeep, if you can share these presentations, it will be great help to our members.
Certainly, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think I'm done with my polls. So can we just close
Okay.
the session?
Yeah. Lot of thanks
Thank
to you, Sudeep and Lina. Thank you very much. It was so beautiful session. Every word of yours was so important, and this will finally impact the industry to a great extent. And really, this is the quite path-breaking rules the government has enacted. And I hope all my Intel auditor friend, everybody will be to a great extent, they will be benefited with this. And on behalf of organizers, I like to thank my chapter colleague, Mr. Barun, who organized this. Also, Barun from GT and my other PDM committee members. And my great thanks and my appreciations to Mr. Sudeep and Lina. You have really dealt the subject so nicely. So thank you very much. Only one thing is that since the time was too short, so we like to have one more session on this, one follow-on sessions quickly within next 1, 2, 3 months like that. Whenever your time permits, we'll organize one more thing. And last, I like to thank Meenaz and Chanchal and our IIA teams for making this facility so that we can reach to our members with our list of our own involvements. And really, thank you very much. Thanks a lot to Sudeep and Lina. Thank you.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much to everyone.
Thank
Our
you,
pleasure.
sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Yeah, same to you and Lina and to all the participants. Thank you very much.